This is the end of the year, my friend. The end. Time to look at PAIZO again, my friend. The end. This is what you get for not subscribing. I said, 2,000 subs, I'll stop singing, I'll stop talking about Wizards of the Coast, but nope, I guess you guys like my singing. So I'm going to keep doing it. It is, I don't know what time it is. 7:42, I think, but my computer's being wonky, so who knows? It's the 29th day of 2023, the year in tabletop role-playing game controversy has come to an end. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Whimper. So, as we have done every Friday for a while now, it's time to head on over to the PAIZO, Piazzo website and take a look at what is updated news-wise regarding their plans for 2024. Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered Core, whatever it's called. And, of course, the mysterious open role-playing contract that came out of the OGL January Manic Panic. So, let's rewind the tape all the way back to the start. If you remember January of last year, after Wizards of the Coast dropped the OGL bomb, we all wondered what PAIZO was going to do, because if you trace the history back of the OGL way back to the beginnings, obviously Pathfinder plays a huge part in the popularity and empowerment of the OGL way back in the Stone Age of the early 2000s. You remember the early 2000s? We still had black and white TV. We hadn't discovered glass or fire yet. Right? Anyway, so yeah. They said, okay, we see what you're doing, Wizards of the Coast, and it makes no sense, but it's pretty shitty. So we're just going to make our own, because there's nothing saying we can't. You don't own that idea. So they made their own, and everybody was very excited, and it was called the O.R.C., and they went through a huge practice of checking it and double checking it and asking questions and sending it out to lawyers. They did the job the right way. Say what you will about Plazo this year, but at least they followed the appropriate steps to make sure that when the O.R.C. went out into the world, it would be foolproof, or as foolproof as you can make a legal document. They hired lawyers. They made the mission statement very clear that once it was live, they were going to have nothing to do with it. It was going to be controlled by a completely independent source, the attorneys. So, they're attorneys. How independent and, non-biased are they going to be? It went through all the steps. Finally, it went to the Department of Copyrights and the Library of Congress. Obviously, it passed. And then that was the last we heard of it. PAIZO, Piazzo, Porlablo never told us whether it had actually made it through the Library of Congress and made it through the copyright process or not. They left that responsibility to other companies. And they've got even further to distance themselves from their baby by not posting a single link to it on their website. So if you want to find a copy of the ORC and what you need to do to follow it, to use it for your product line, I have included the link down below where you can find it. So now the ORC open role-playing contract is live. You can use it. You can use it to create product for pretty much anything that fell under what we used to call the OGL. Not to say the OGL doesn't exist, because it still does. It's not like it went away. It's still floating out there in the way that this weirdness works. Now, I could try and explain it, but let's face it, I'm an idiot, and I don't think I could. My friend, RPG Grandma. But yeah, if you want to use the ORC for any product you want to publish going forward for Pathfinder or any other company that says, yes, we'll use it, you can. And, if you're putting out a game product that has anything even remotely connected to D20, throw it on the legal stuff, because it can't hurt. And there's nothing saying you can't use it. I use it on all my stuff now. If you go to the legal stuff section of all the Wretched stuff that I put out lately, you will notice that acknowledge the ORC. So yes, you can use it. It's out there. And the link is down below if you want to use it for your product in 2024. The other big thing, of course, that came out of PaiZo in 2024 was Pathfinder 2 2nd Edition Remastered Electric Boogaloo Core Infinite, or whatever it is called. Right now it's called Pathfinder Core. It is not called Pathfinder 2E Remastered anymore. It's called Pathfinder Core. So I guess their philosophy is, this is it. This will be the last Pathfinder Core rule set we make forever. Of course, we know that's utter bullshit, and we'll probably have a new one in 4 or 5 years. But let's take them at their word and assume that they mean this. Everything going forward will be compatible with Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered. Not that you can't use Pathfinder previous stuff. They've put all the Pathfinder 2nd Edition stuff hugely marked down PDF-wise on a bumble. If you go to their store, you can see that all the Pathfinder 2nd Edition stuff is marked down. All the Pathfinder 1st Edition is marked down. So if you haven't picked up the physical products yet of the older stuff and you want to finish out your collection of Pathfinder 2nd Edition crap or Pathfinder 1st Edition crap, you can. Both the PDFs and the physicals are marked down. Pathfinder 2nd Edition core stuff is out. It's printed. The core rules are ready to go. You can start using it today. What's the big difference, OGGM, from Pathfinder 2 and Pathfinder 2 Remastered? Other than some, behind the scenes stuff, spelling mistakes, editing, errata, rules that they fixed. What's the big thing? Well, the big thing was they wanted to scrub, that's the word, scrub any connection between Pathfinder and OGL/D&D. So they wanted Pathfinder to be looked at as a completely separate entity from going forward, which it already was. Okay, let's face it, it already was. I mean, if you look at Pathfinder 1st Edition when it started, as opposed to Pathfinder 1st Edition when it ended, it gradually became a completely different game, especially if you start adding all the splat books and the direction they were taking the game. And then Pathfinder 2nd Edition came out around the same time Tasha's came out, because they wanted to be competitive with Wizards of the Coast back then. The philosophy changed. It became way more permissive and liberal, or woke, as some of the people call it. And the design of the game is completely different. It is only D&D OGL in that if you look at the character sheet and didn't know the difference, you could probably think that was a 5e character record sheet or just a standard D20 character sheet. And they kept stuff like strength, dex, con, armor class, and hit points. But they scrubbed everything else, like Minotaurs and the Drow. And let's face it, the way they scrubbed the Drow or Drow from the game was kind of dumb. So that leaves us today with the final news of Pizo. We know that they are making Kingmaker for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered Core. Kingmaker, probably one of my 2-3 favorite adventure paths that they have ever made. Not only does it present a very interesting villain, but it has the kingdom building rules that are pretty decent. And it's a pretty good adventure path. It's probably of the adventure paths I'm familiar with from Pizo. It's one of my favorites. So they're remastering again for Pathfinder 2 2nd Edition, so some things will change. They did a Kickstarter for the Compass, and that Kickstarter is still going. So this is going to be the Wayfinder, that is the symbol of the Pathfinder Society in the Pathfinder world. They're sort of a secret, semi-secret society of do-gooders and rabble-rousers and troublemakers who go around the world of Pathfinder doing sort of, special forces good stuff, but not as bloody as special forces. And their symbol is this magical compass. So they have kickstarted this magical compass. Let's see if we have a picture of it. We do. It looks that. And it's still going live. Now, the big question, of course, was, is it actually a functioning compass or just artistically? And now we have a look at the inside of it, and I still can't tell. Is that actually a functional compass, Or is it just a picture to make it look like a functional compass? Apparently, if you bring it to organized play, you get a bonus. So if you kickstart this thing and it succeeds and you get the compass, if you take the Pathfinder compass physical product with you and play an organized play game at a convention or a game store of the Pathfinder Society, you get a super special bonus that nobody else gets. I don't know if that's awesome or bad, but it's definitely different. But yes, is it an actually functioning compass? Okay, it looks like it's a functioning compass. It says it's a navigational tool, but I can't tell if it actually is or it just looks like one. Does this thing actually point to north as you move? I don't know, because usually there's water and you can see the bubbles. But anyways, the Kickstarter is going on. It's a thing. The being able to use it as a coupon at the actual game to get freebies is kind of cool. Maybe unfair, but then you're like, hey, I kickstarted it. And if you didn't kickstart it, don't cry to me. It's not fair. He gets a free thing. Yeah. And finally, we get to the what made them the most money this year on Pathfinder Infinite. What's Pathfinder Infinite? Pathfinder Infinite is their version of the DM's Guild. So it's where people can put third-party product designed for Pathfinder. If you wanted to use the ORC to make a Pathfinder or Starfinder adventure and make it quote-unquote official, you could load it onto Infinite. And it looks like the number one stuff for these were Rainbow of Elements, Kitsune of Glorian, Player Core Expanded, Shattered Omens of Glorian, and the Traveler's Guide to the Darklands. The top performers for 2023 for Starfinder was Absalom Drift, Deep Space Adventures, the Space Cowboys Arsenal, Mecha Threat Manual for Starfinder, and Starship Maps, because, hey, yeah. And then we've got some new stuff coming out next year. It looks like we've got at least the name of a new adventure path called Witness the Pale Festival and some other new archetypes and stuff. So, yeah. And all this is officially okay with being used legally at Pathfinder and Starfinder games. How did they scrub the Drow? Okay, for those of you who haven't heard this, the Drow existed in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and they're pretty much extremely similar to the Drow of D&D. You know, they were innately sort of kind of evil. They lived underground. They, radiation and pink hair and two swords, and they're pretty much their own thing. And even after the Midnight Falls adventure path where the Drow tried to take over the world, they were kind of not their own thing. They were basically sort of the same. But you could have Drow player characters, and you could have a Drow player character ranger who, for some reason, dual-wielded scimitars, but whatever. So when they announced Pathfinder 2 Remastered, they said, we're scrubbing the Drow. Drow are too connected with Wizards of the Coast. Wizards owns the copyright to Drow. So we're getting rid of the idea of Drow. And how they explain this is, I guess it's explained in the actual rule books, is that, in fact, the Drow never existed. There were no Drow. There were never any Drow. It was all a lie. The guy who had documented the Drow was lying. He'd never been to the Underdark. He just made them up. The closest things is the Cavern Elves, which are still in the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered core rulebook, I think. But no, according to them, all the lore, all the adventures, everything that had happened since whenever Pathfinder came out that had any connection to the Drow were made up. And a lot of that stuff was actually the responsibility of a different race, an underground humanoid lizard man race, who let this guy say the Drow did it. So the whole adventure path about the Drow taking over the world, in-game lore, never happened. It was a story the guy made up. And if your character went through that adventure, you were actually secretly fighting lizard men, but for some reason your character remembers them as Dro. Yes, it is a very wibbly wobbly, dumb explanation. But that's the explanation. The thing is, they didn't have to do that. There is no reason for them to do that. Wizards of the Coast doesn't own Dro. The word Dro and Drow and the idea of dark elves existed before Wizards, before Drizzt. It dates all the way back to ancient Norse mythology. So yeah, it's a couple thousand years old. Wizards didn't own it. The idea of an underground dwelling elf race, again, not unique to Wizards, but close enough that you could say, well, you're kind of copying Wizards. But not really. They could have used Dro and just changed a few things and still used the word and still used the idea of an evil elf race. But they decided to instead just come up with this sort of silly explanation that they never actually existed. Now, there are still a race of dark elves in Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered. They just have different names. And they've done different things. And that brings us to the end. Now, I know I get shit on a lot for the way I say PAIZO, whatever. I'm not sure why that's so important to people. But on average, I get at least one a month giving me a whole bunch of crap because I mispronounced the name. PAIZO, Piazio. Now, you would think that would encourage me to try and pronounce the name rightly, because apparently it's upsetting people if I say PAIZO instead of PAIZO or Piazio or whatever the actual name is. And if it was anybody else, I probably would. I'd probably go, oh, I'm sorry, my learning disability makes it so I don't say the word the correct way, whatever the correct way is, even if there is a correct way. Let me endeavor to try harder to say it the way you want to hear it. I could do that, but I'm not going to. In fact, if you know me that that's going to be an incentive for me to mispronounce it even further. Just like the guy who kept trying to call me idiot only made me reinforce that. And let's not forget West Coast Grognard, the guy who kept trying to insult me by calling me West Coast Grognard and now calls me DM Grumpy McGrump or the OSR Grinch. It's only going to make me double down more. Remember that? OSR Grinch, DM Grumpy McGrump, West Coast Grognard. You thought you were going to hurt my feelings? I just doubled down and copyrighted the name. So if you're going to give me shit for mispronouncing PAIZO, I'm going to double down on mispronouncing PAIZO. You had your chance. You could have given me 2,000 subs, but you didn't. So you have no one to blame but yourself. Am I a bitter, cynical asshole? Yes, I am. That's it for the RPG news regarding our friends over at PAIZO Piazio. What is going to go on with PAIZO next year? They are poised to be the game. You know, much like Pathfinder took the slack when 4th edition failed so miserably. That's the topic for a separate vlog. Pathfinder 2 2nd Edition Remastered is poised to be the game that the people who still want a as close as possible D&D experience without supporting 5e could go. And it could win the race much the same way Pathfinder first did way back when during the 4th edition years. Or people could look at some of the other ones and go, nah, I'm going to do this one instead. Where does it rate on the most expected games of 2024? Well, it's already comes out, so technically it doesn't count. But I'd say as of now, it's in 3rd place. So the top 3, of course, is I think I know who that is. There's a couple people who that might be. I'd have to read the trolls. So I'll go over to your site and read them. But I think I know who that is. There's a couple who do that, but they're all like, the same dude, or a couple of the same dudes. We know that a few of the people who have trolled me over the years have done it. Not mentioning ever names, but whatever. I know who it is. We know who it is. We don't know who it is. My trolls are. Yeah. Like I had this guy who was trolling me, and you looked at the words, and then you looked at the other guy's words, and they were the exact same way he said the things. And I was like, dude, that's fucking you. And he's like, no, it's not. I would never ever do that. And he was like, yeah, dude, it's the same words. But we digress. I'll have to look at these comments, RPG Grammar, or if you want to send me a link. But yeah, if you ever want to talk about it, we could share troll stories. Yeah, so that was like Aaron. Damn you for distracting me, woman. Okay, so yeah, right now, Daggerheart, #1 most expected game, but it's teetering on losing its incentive. In fact, if Mercer and company don't do anything before the end of January, I'm going to say whatever impetus Daggerheart has is going to be lost if they don't start really pushing it. By the end of January 2024, we're deep into the other games. People are going to forget Daggerheart. Oh, this is the guy suing folks? Well, then that's probably Lanasa. Tales from the Valiant. Tales from the Valiant's #2 right now, but again, it's not on the market yet. So if it doesn't come out by March, and then #3 is Pathfinder 2 2nd Edition Remastered. And the only reason why it's lower is because Pathfinder 2 2nd Edition Remastered is not a 5e clone. It has become its own thing. You can't really call it a D&D clone anymore, other than the fact that it uses some of the same names, like Fighter, and they uses the same mechanics of D20. But yeah, it's its own game. It's not D&D 5e adjacent. Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered is its own system, is its own game, is its own OGL ORC thing. It just uses mechanics that we're familiar with. But I'd say it's #3. But really, it could jump to #1, right? I mean, what do you guys... If 5e failed next year, what game are you looking at to fill the gap? Is it Pathfinder 1st Edition, because we're familiar with it? Is it Pathfinder 2nd Edition? Is it Tales from the Valiant? Or is it something else that's going to step up and fill the 5e blank, like DC 20? I don't know. We'll see. Till next time, I'm the OGGM who's going to keep mispronouncing PAIZO until I get bored of it. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you in a bit. I got to send this woman a message. All right. Thanks for chopping by. Stay healthy, and Happy New Year.